Hello everyone, this is JPL, and today I am joined with...
Hey, it's ToaLegend.
Yes, and we are a podcast named in brackets. Today is a different podcast than normal. Instead of talking about any movies or TV shows that we like or dislike, today we're going to just talk about something that's near and dear to our heart. And
Bionicle.
Bionicle! Bionicle! Um,
Bonkle.
that silly phrase. So yeah, Bionicle. That's a thing.
Yeah, it is. I can confirm. I'd
Mm-hmm.
be actually surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah, it'd be very surprising and disappointing that all those years of our lives and childhoods have been wasted into nothingness. Anyway,
Very true.
yes, so Bionicle. Toa, what is Bionicle?
Oh, wow. Uh, Bionicle is a early 2000s Lego toy line based mainly on the Technic system. Um, it is one of their, at the times, one of their more original um, types of sets.
Hmm.
So they had, at the time, they didn't actually have that many different IPs. In fact, there was a while where Lego was really feeling like they were going to go under because of the rising popularity of video games and specifically Pokemon, right? And Lego just didn't really know what to do, and they're trying to. I think they were looking into Lego Star Wars at the time, but
Yeah.
it wasn't doing well, and so they came up with this idea for a character driven story based off of these um, action figure sized superheroes, essentially,
Hmm.
based on the Technic system, so that it would kind of appeal to older audiences, specifically like 10 to 14 year olds that would otherwise might be getting into Pokemon instead. And under the creative direction of Christian Faber, the early writer for Bionicle, they created this toy line with a story, something that wasn't like really anything Lego had ever done before, and they called it Bionicle.
Yeah. Yeah. It went on for at least 9 years before it got canceled in 2010. This is from 2001 to 2010. And eventually it got rebooted in 2014, 2015, and then got canceled again a year later in 2016. Uh, so, yeah, Bionicle. That was a fantastic toy line. And it's also very influential one at that. I know that the two of us were greatly inspired by Bionicle. Is that right?
Yep, very much so. I mean, even my username is in reference to Bionicle,
Yeah.
being that for those that don't know, the general breakdown of Bionicle, it's got a deeper lore than probably either of us are going to talk about much today.
Yeah.
But just as a quick breakdown, um, you have this bad guy named
Yeah.
Makuta. You've got the villagers, which are Matoran. You've got the elders of the village, which are Turaga, and then you've got the essentially superheroes, the protectors of the Matoran. They're called the Toa, and so that is what inspired me to take the name ToaLegend.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
And of course, for me, since my channel is Lego JPL, the Lego is the one that's more specifically not to Bionicle, but when you look at my posters or my what you call it, my banner, I use the Bionicle Matoran alphabet for the JPL section, and that's part of my signature as well. my fan-made signature that I do. And of course, my mocks that I have made for the channel as well. They're all Bionicle based, and Bionicle is just really fun. It's a unique idea that was at the time. It's inspired the future Lego lines, for instance, Ninjago.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching the series recently, and I could just see a lot of Bionicle influences in Ninjago.
Yeah.
Like the Dark Lord and the Shadows, the elemental powers.
Yeah, for sure.
And the golden weapons that you try to collect and find. And it's fun. It's fun. It's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so one thing that... Yeah?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So one thing that I really just wanted to discuss mainly today was just talk about what does Bionicle mean to us as people and as friends. Is that so? Yeah, what were we gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna ask when did you get into Bionicle? Like, when did you first start? I feel like that's a good starting place.
That was one of the questions I had thought for.
Hey.
It's very strange because I have to figure things out at that time, because some of the memories there of when I first got into Bionicle are kind of a bit fuzzy about which was the first. But if my memory serves me correct, which I hope it does, the first time I saw Bionicle was in 2002, and it was a green Bow-Rock. I can vividly remember this. I saw my cousin building this thing. I didn't know what it was back then. I didn't even ask. I just thought it looked cool. And then years later, this is like 2005, 2006, my friends, quote unquote, from elementary school, they got Bionicles, and they would bring it to school, and they would brag about it. And I was just thought that they were really cool. And I go to my friend's house. He showed me his new Bionicle sets. He'd show me like a part of the movie, which had come out at that time. And it was a cool thing that I grabbed onto. But I didn't really get a Bionicle figure, my first figure, until early or mid 2006, and if my memory serves me correct, my very first Bionicle figure was of Thok, the white Paraka. Since then, I would then get the two other Paraka, Zaktan and Vizon, and they were Vazok. Not Vizon. Vizon is a big one that I don't have. Vazok. And so I would get Bionicle at that time for my birthday or Christmas. They were always the number one thing on my list. I'd put it at the top so that my grandma would get me Bionicle, that she knew that was the one I wanted. I got all three of the movies that one year. And then I also got the Toa Metru at that year as well. The entire Toa team. And the thing that was really special about that one was that it wasn't something that was just given to me all completely. They were something that I knew that my mom bought. She bought it, but she wouldn't give it to me unless I did something to earn it. So after I did a few things like good grades for a certain period of time, 100 on this test, I did this action to help out or something, I would be rewarded with one Toa. And so it was an incentive to do good, to be my best. One of those fun things as a kid where it's like, oh my gosh, I want a Toa, woo! I don't know why it's like that exactly, but it was a great incentive for that time. And then
Yeah.
Christmas of that year of 2006, I got the Toanika, 3 of them, which was Kongu, uh, Huki, and Holly. And I'm not going to go over everything just yet throughout the history of the sets. That's going to be a topic for a different discussion. But yeah, those were my main Bionicle sets for a lot of the times as a kid. And they were the ones that I mainly grew up with and I just cherished and I really enjoyed. Yeah, that's for me. How
Hmm.
about you?
So the first time I think I was exposed to Bionicle, um, it must have been pretty early on in my life, maybe 2003. Um, so I was pretty young, maybe 3 or 4, and being so I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, any kind of like Lego stuff was always like a season or two behind.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember at one point I was just going out um, on the field at our school, and there were some kids who lived there from overseas, and they had brought some Bionicles that they were playing with, specifically Borok, and they were just playing around with them, and I thought they were the coolest things,
Mm.
and I just thought they were really cool. Uh, they didn't let me play with them because I was a few years younger than them, but I thought they were cool.
Yeah.
Didn't think much about them. A few years rolled around, and they had the Maturo sets,
Mm.
and I remember they were doing like they had created a game out of with the Maturo canisters. You could take the tops off and put the tops together to create this little ball, which in
Yeah.
the story was the the Matoran capsules.
Mm-hmm.
But they took this ball and they kind of like put it on the carpeted ground, and they modified the it must have been the original Toa set, the Toa Mata, to kind of all have Pohachu builds so that they could all kick the ball around, or they'd use the Borok to hit the ball around. I remember that was really cool. They let me play that once or twice until I just kind of started slamming the the characters into it. But yeah, I didn't really get too into it until one of my friends got one of the movies. It was specifically Bionicle 2, and I
Mm.
was like, oh, this is interesting, because before then I was like, oh, these are cool, but I didn't know they had a story at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember I watched that with this friend, and I was like, okay, this is really cool. And I kind of started delving deeper into the story from there. My parents found out, and I don't remember to this day, honestly, whether my first set was the red Vaki from 2004,
Mm.
or because I think it was, but we moved to the U.S. When I was in first grade, and I remember really wanting to get a Bionicle, and I checked like every store that I could, but I didn't have enough money to buy a new one, and I was just
No.
looking around, and at Dollar General I looked, and I was like, surely like they're not gonna have anything here. It's like a dollar store, but it's Dollar General is just essentially cheap goods. It's not necessarily like a Dollar Tree, right?
No.
And so I was looking around, and then I saw it, and there was just a bunch of canisters of Pohachu Nuva, which at the time I was like, wait, why are there so many of the brown ones? Of course, for me, I always went after the green ones when I was little,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really looking for the green one, and I didn't see him, and I was like, this is still good enough, and so I went ahead and got that one, and I was still young, so building them on my own was not my forte, but my dad helped me out. He actually built Pohachu wrong, because Pohachu's gear gimmick was that you could rotate the axle on his back, and his one leg would move so that he could kick his boulder. But my dad built it so that both legs would move, so that he was running, which actually kind of fit with the mask of speed that he was wearing. But I didn't even notice at the time. And then in the next few years, I started getting into the story a little bit. Not crazy. Like, I watched... actually, the first Bionicle movie I watched was the third one. Then I watched the second one. But I didn't know what was going on in the third. Yeah. And then I kind of started to piece together the story. And I really only thought that 2004 and 2005 were connected. Because, like, I didn't even think, like... My thought process at the time was every year there was a new set of Toa, and they didn't really look alike, so they must be new sets of heroes every year. And it made sense to me. It didn't really, like, click that there was an actual story going on. But I remember very clearly in 2006, Bionicle was getting hyped up for the Bionicle game, Bionicle Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
Which was really cool. And I remember looking at that and being like, oh, that's so cool, that's so edgy, that's awesome. And so I went to the webpage like several times a day just to look at the characters. And I remember of all the characters, the one that stood out as far as the name was Jowler, because Jowler, I thought it said jailer the first time that I read it. And I was like, okay, well, at least that's like a pretty normal-ish name, like as far as like it's a title. And then I looked at it again and I was like, no, that's not an I, that's an L. Why is his name Jowler? That's so weird. Didn't even think anything of it. Didn't know which characters were like why the bad characters were bad or why the good characters were good. The only thing I knew was that that year the villains looked a lot cooler than the heroes and had like a more intricate build, and B, the green one I didn't like. This was the first time. Not the villains, sorry, of the heroes.
You did not like Kongu?
No, Kongu is still, I think, one of the worst looking Toa.
He's one of my favorite Toa from 2006. I just thought that was one of the coolest looking faces.
Nah, but I was at the time I was all about symmetry. So like I didn't like any of the Toa of Ice beforehand because their masks were asymmetrical. And then Kongu rolls around and his mask is asymmetrical. And I'm like, this is so frustrating. And so 2006 was the first time I didn't have a favorite one. I did end up, Kongu was the one that I did end up getting. But I had the choice of which one I wanted to get. And I was kind of in between. I wanted to get Nuparu because I noticed that he had a few extra pieces. And in my brain, I'm like, well, obviously, if I'm going to pay $18 for a Bionicle, and I'm going to get the one with the most pieces, especially because Nuparu had like claws, and I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And then he just wasn't at the store, probably because other people thought the same thing. So I had the choice between either getting Kongu, Maturo, Huki, or Gali. Not Gali. Holly. My bad. And I got Huki for a friend because it was their birthday. And I got Kongu for myself. And later I think I ended up getting Holly for Christmas or something. But anyways, then 2007 rolls around, and this is the big year for me, because finally I was the one that was paying attention to Bionicle. Beforehand, it was everybody else telling me the news. This time, I was the first one to discover that Bionicle refreshed Lego refreshed the Bionicle page when the Baraki came out. And so I was like ahead of the curve. I was super hyped, and that's when I actually kind of started getting into the story. After the Baraki, the Toamari got announced, and I looked at the names and I was like, well, first off, I was like, okay, I need to find a new favorite because like the green one in the last generation wasn't very good, so maybe the new green one will be better. And I started looking at the names and I was like, wait, Jailer, no, Jowler, wait, this is the same one as the last one. And finally that last thing clicked, and I was like, they're the same character. Those two are the same character, and those are, oh. And finally everything was falling into place, and I was like, I just got to read the comics now. And it was funny because I think I started with the Mari comics. It was either the Mari or the Inika comics. Maybe it was the Inika. Anyways, especially after how hyped I was with the Mari trailer. Now, the Mari trailer I still think is the most hyped one to me. In fact, all of Bionicle's like announcements and commercials were like always hype, but the Mari one has always stood out to me. So, yeah, in 2007 they released the Mari announcement, and from there I got I'll get back to this point later, but I got more into Bionicle, and that's 2007, 2008 is really when I delved into the story and got really hooked on getting a bunch of sets and a bunch of comics wherever I could. And yeah, it was a good year, good times.
Yeah, I know for me, early on, in fact for a really long time, I didn't really get into the story very much. I wasn't actually, for the longest time, I wasn't actually aware of the Toamata. I had just thought, I just thought that the Bionicle started with the first movie, with the Toa Nuva, and went from there. And it wasn't really till 2007 that I was looking on YouTube at Bionicle Fighters. Do you know Bionicle Fighters? Or the Bionicle Wars. It was back during that time where Bionicle stop motion was one of the big things on YouTube when YouTube was still brand new.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. That was one of the few things I would watch on YouTube as a kid. Bionicle Fighters, Bionicle Wars, any of those fun stop motions. And there was this one stop motion by Spidey 406, who had these the Toamata fighting against the Borok, and it was like, who are those people? Who they? Like, they look so tiny. Like, what are they? And then I was just looking more into it. I found a stop motion series called Mata. I can't find it since then, but it was at the time. I remember it being called Mata, and there I got to see them. I got to see the Taraga, and it was like, what? Are these real? Are these sets? What are they? And then and then I started looking on eBay. That was one of the early instances where I was using eBay. I found that there were the Toamata. I was like, wow, I want one. I never got one. I didn't actually get a Toamata set until 2010 or 2011 when I moved to the US and found one Totahu at a yard sale. So yeah, for the longest time I didn't know about the Toamata. And also, I didn't really get much into the story like you, really ever in a long time. I know that I tried at one point. I got one of the books. It was the beginning of the Bionicle Adventures book with the Toamitru.
Yeah.
And this was around 2007 or 2008, I believe. And I tried reading. I got through like maybe the first chapter and then I just stopped. I find it difficult to read sometimes. It's just paying attention and focusing.
Yeah.
So that's why I just never got into any of the books or just looking stuff online. It's because I don't like reading. It's the information may be fun when I actually do read it, but it's a lot of work to do to actually get into it. And so I never actually got into the story. All I had was the movies. Eventually, at that same year, I got all the graphic novels, the comics that we had so far, which led up to, I believe, the Cardanui section. Cardanui might have been a brand new one that just came out, and I got that as well. But I remember that was the only place where I learned about the story. And there was just always these confusing segments where it's like, want to know what happened? Read this chapter from this book. And it's like, oh, that's a shame. Or find out the conclusion in the Mask of Life movie. It's like, oh, well, I've already seen that. That's cool. So, and then, it wasn't till 2 years ago that I actually bought a bunch of Bionicle books, and I started reading them. During the middle of a play. I know there's an image that I shared with you with just me reading the book with my headset. And so yeah, I'm starting to get more into the story, but for the longest time, and it's still, I'm not fully completing the books, but for the longest time, even now, I'm not fully complete on the story of all these characters. I know that they have a compelling story, but I was just never really one to get into it. I knew that I wanted to get into it. I know that I asked you questions about things, and you always led me to the Bionicle Story website, which I never went to, sadly. But yeah, I never really got into the story until very recently. And I'll finish the story eventually. Thank you, Biomedia Project, for having all this information. But yeah, that is me.
Yeah, as far as the story goes, like 2004, 2005 were the easy years to get into, because beforehand I was too young. 2004 was about the age that I could start paying attention to, and that was also technically everything in those 2 years happened before everything else. So you had a lot of like the origin story. So you got to see the Toa Maturo turn into Toa, and then see them turn into Hordika, and then see them turn into Turaga. And so that part was like, oh, okay, well, that's easy to follow. And I just kind of thought that was the whole story for a long time. And then I saw Mask of Light, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess there's a little bit more. And I especially got into like the powers, because in Bionicle there's a couple different categories of powers. And as someone who's always been like a superhero fan, I really enjoyed how Bionicle had every hero had an elemental power and a mask power. So based off of whatever color they were, that was their elemental power, which they don't really use much in any of the movies, really. In Mask of Light they do a little bit, but in the other two it's not as apparent. In fact, literally I didn't know that Matau was a Toa of Air until Rudaka said air as she yeets him onto the floor at one point. But yeah, I just didn't know. But I did like how each Toa had elemental powers, and then they had this mask power, and the mask power was based off of whatever mask they were wearing at the time. And there was a large range in what masks could do. But I remember one game that I played with some of my friends when I was younger was kind of a game of, if you owned a Bionicle figure, you could pretend that you had their mask power in this game. So those of us that had like a lot of Bionicle sets, or well, I shouldn't say us, I didn't have that many at the time. But those that did have more Bionicle sets generally had a better chance of doing well in this childhood role-playing game, I suppose.
Yeah.
Almost LARPing with these mask powers.
Mm-hmm.
And that all changed once I got Gorast, which is a Makuta that could disrupt other people's mask powers. And that was fun. But yeah, as far as the story goes, I didn't really get into it much until like 2008 was probably about the time that I was like, yes, I'm finally getting into it. I read up on the Mari, and then I read up on the Anika, and then I went back, and one of my friends let me borrow their entire Bionicle Adventures series. So all of 2004, 2005, I've read through. And then, at the end of 2008, they do this big reveal that, secretly this whole time, and I'll throw a spoiler warning right here, even though it's a, Lego franchise that's 20 years old, but, the whole reveal is that they've been inside this giant robot the whole time, and their deity Matanui, who they've been trying to awaken this whole time, is actually the world that they live in.
Oh my, that was the most mind-blowing advertisement that they showed.
Oh yeah.
It was also it was so cool, like that giant robot coming up from the island during that time where it's like, what the heck is going on? That's pretty cool. And then his eyes turn red and the mask of lights gets sent off, and it's like, what just happened?
Yeah, but that's the thing. 2008 is where everything, as far as the story goes, becomes so unbelievably complicated. Because you have, 2001 to 2003, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is, pretty easy to follow. Like, you don't know why you're on an island, but it's cool to see, these robotic figures on, a natural setting. Then 2004, 2005, you get this, recap of, how they got there. Then 2006, 2007, it's like, all right, back in present zone, we got to save the universe because it's actually dying. Then 2008 rolls around, and it's like, yeah, we saved the universe. Whoa, the universe is a giant robot. Also, the first island that we were on, which is actually the second island, was actually an island on top of the robot. So that got destroyed. But the first island, which is the second one we found out about, looks pretty much exactly like it, except it's smaller and more city-like. And that's inside the brain of the robot. Also, and it just goes into this super, super deep lore, which, now that I'm looking at it, is really, really cool. And there was always this depth to get into for Bionicle, but probably one of the biggest issues with it continuing was that they built up so much lore, but their main audience was 9 to maybe 14-year-olds. And
yeah,
a 9-year-old is surprisingly smart, but at a certain point, they're just not gonna understand Matoran walking through their version of hell and seeing I don't know, people that have been trapped there for 100,000 years, just chilling, and also being tormented by Bionicle Satan for forever, and then only a few chapters later see these ex-bounty hunters enslave an entire population of Matoran, and then there's a segment that someone posted in the Bionicle mass posting group of a Matoran worker who's been enslaved, mind controlled, mind you, accidentally stumbles in lava and nobody else, because they're all mind controlled, bats an eye at it. And like, that's kind of dark.
Yeah.
That's dark, Bionicle. Oh yeah, turns out the thing that enslaved them is the essence of the bad guy that they killed in the first in the first movie. Yeah, I guess they pseudo killed in the first movie, but it turns out that he, and along with everybody in his species, had evolved several thousand years ago to where they're essentially just gas. It's very frustrating sometimes.
Well, what? I did not know that.
Yeah, so the green goo that are the Zamor spheres that the Paraka shoot out, yeah, that's the essence of Makuta pterodax. And Makuta, as a species, by the way, Makuta is generally referred to as like the main bad guy, but he's actually part of a species called the Makuta. His name is actually Pterodax, or Terry for short. But yeah, his entire species at one point just like suddenly evolved. It was like an update to their hardware almost, where like there was a small storyline where a bunch of Makuta were just kind of hanging out, and then suddenly they were like, whoa, I can leave my own body and like float around.
What?
And so like their bodies are literally just husks of armor that they can leave at any point, which is why like Makuta could possess Maxilos at one point, why the Makuta was in the Zamor spheres, how Makuta survived this, that, and the other thing, and how Makuta took over the Matanui robot, which, by the way, yeah, plot twist, you finally resuscitate your entire universe, which ends up being a robot, and the god of your universe gets yeeted out, and your universe gets taken over by the bad guy. That's actually a pretty cool plot twist, but very complicated. So, I love the Bionicle story, and I think
Yeah.
it's one of those that you could get into, and it's obviously there is a stopping point, because the writer for Bionicle, the lead writer, Greg Farshtey, stopped writing for Bionicle in 2011. So there is a stopping point, unless you get into like fan fiction alternate universes. But
Like my ideas.
yeah, but that's kind of the cool thing about Bionicle is the story ended, and albeit it could have and probably should have ended in a better way, but it ended.
Yeah.
That being said, it's still like there's still a really prominent community, which is amazing. And the cool thing about Bionicle, and even just Lego in general, is, you know, they could tell us that it had a story or not have a story. And as long as the sets were cool or the characters were cool, we could build our own story.
Yeah.
Or even if it was just kind of a basic story, we could use their ideas and build off of it. And so there's a ton of really well-written, honestly, fan fiction generally gets a bad rap, but in Bionicle it's not necessarily the case, because there's a lot of good alternate like universe ideas that work really well, and they could exist within canon because Bionicle does delve into alternate universes a little bit. So it's really nifty. Obviously, I have to contrast that a little bit, because when Bionicle made its resurgence in 2014, the sets were good,
Yeah.
but there was little to no story to it, and that I think is what killed it. They didn't have their lead writer. Greg Farshtey actually went on to write Forward Ninjago, which is probably a big reason why it does feel so similar. But in the generation 2 of Bionicle was it was very shallow in the story area. And I think the set
Yeah.
design was actually really cool, especially for the first wave.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was amazing. But beyond that, it was a little bit iffy.
Do you remember when Bionicle was announced to be over?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
That was it was rough because like I was young, right? This is 2010, 2009, 2010, and in my lifespan, I'm probably like 11 or 12 at that point. Not very much has like ended. Like I hadn't seen very many like companies go bankrupt or storylines end, except like Avatar was the only thing that I could think of, the only thing I could reference. But Avatar was a little different because it had a clear, concise ending to it. So yeah, it was sad that it was over, but it had an amazing ending. When I heard Bionicle was over, it was almost ground shaking to me.
Oh yeah.
I know that I think that was the year that I got a Facebook account. And immediately, like the day that it was announced, there was already a Facebook group. That was the Bring Back Bionicle Club. And I immediately joined that, and I was like so ready to like be a part of it, and I was excited. And I remember early on there were a lot of people that were like writing petitions to like try and keep it going, or a lot of people had in their mind that, well, if Bionicle's ending, I'm going to write my own story and continue it. There were a lot of things thrown around.
Oh yeah.
It was a little rough because, again, Bionicle didn't really have the send-off that I think it should have.
Yeah, and we got Bionicle Stars.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We had really, like, early on there were a lot of sets that were just kind of replicas of each other. Like, all the Boroks are just recolors of each other, right? All the Vaki, the Vizorak, even the Toametru.
And they had effort into them, though.
Yes, they totally did. And then 2006 rolls around, and it's a little bit different per each set. Pretty much the same, though. 2007 rolls around, and that's the Toamari. And the Baraki and the Toamari, I think, are still some of the best sets because of how different they are. But from that year forward, they really gave different characters different builds. And different weapons, and made each character feel really different. It was super cool. And they did that every year. And then in the last wave of Bionicle, they tell the story only through online, like an online game. And I guess they did through books as well. They were planning to have told it through a movie, but that never got released.
They had one movie that was planned to be a trilogy of movies.
Right. So that was rough. And then the Stars were... The Bionicle Stars was the last series of Gen 1 Bionicle. And they were essentially sets that were the same size as the Matoran in previous sets. And even like more so, the problem was because I don't know if I would have minded it as much if they were like early version Matoran or like Metro Nui Matoran or even Voya Nui Matoran, but they were Carda Nui Matoran style sets or Agori sets. And the problem with those is I don't think their piece count went above 20, and I could be wrong, but it wasn't great.
No,
and
it was not.
The idea for these was they were supposed to be like the best of the best sets, kind of like an homage, a final homage. And so you had Tahu, which was an easy choice for red. You had three heroes and 3 villains. You had Tahu, solid pick. You had Takanuva for white, which was an interesting choice, especially since he's always been golden in the past. But it's whatever. And then you had Gresh for green. So it was kind of a representation across the board. You get you get a Toa, like a standard Toa, you get a Toa of light, and then you get a Neo Toa, I guess. The Glatorian were kind of all. Gresh was almost made a Toa. Like it's weird. But anyways, you get him represented, one of the heroes of the new world that they're on. And then on the other side, you get the Rakshi, which everybody loved the Rakshi. You get the Skakti, which are the species that the Paraka are. And then you get what was the last one? Oh, the Skrull.
Skrull.
So, there totally was representation across the board. But also, we had become accustomed to every year you get 6 heroes, 6 villains, and generally 6 Matoran or villagers. And sometimes you even got Turaga. But this year, we didn't have that at all. It was just those 6 sets. Small sets, small canisters. Technically, you could combine them. They did do one thing that I think set the way for Ninjago well, is that they included 1 golden piece in each of the sets. And you
would combine the sets to get the golden Tahu.
Yeah. And that was really cool. I actually those golden pieces are pretty dope.
Yeah.
But again, these are Cardinui sets, so none of the sets have gear functions.
They're easy to break.
Terribly easy to break. 2008 onwards, the production quality for any of the joint pieces just plummeted.
Oh yeah.
It was really rough. And there's a lot of jokes about lime, because lime joints tended to break more quickly.
There was a reason behind that, yeah.
Yeah, there's some truth. But yeah, so the send off for Bionicle was really rough, and it was kind of bittersweet because Greg Farshty was going to keep writing a few story serials to try and wrap it up towards the end, and he started into a few. I don't remember if it was Yesterday Quest. No. That was the one with Tardik, I think. Anyways, he started one, Riddles of the Great Beings. That's what it is. That was supposed to kind of explain who the great beings were and why they did what they did and all that. And you got to see it through the eyes of some new Toa that we had never met before. And it was really cool. But it got stopped partway through. And we never really got to see much of that. So it just kind of left us wanting. But not necessarily in a bad way. I'm never gonna look back at Bionicle and be like, that was such a waste. I know my only comparison would be I know people very much dislike the ending to Game of Thrones. It wasn't that bad.
No.
The story was okay. It was just the presentation of the story that was kind of a bummer.
Oh yeah, because the final story was only, at that time, they did a cool thing. Instead of having a movie, they had these story serials with Michael Dorn telling the final battle.
Yeah. That was really cool. And all of the cinematics that they did for really everything was great. They didn't do it too much in the end, but between all of the character showings, the creeping in the deep, creeps from the deep video, the crashed video,
move along.
move along.
Yo Paraka.
Yo Parak, yeah. That
Oh
was
yeah.
that was solid. That year was such a like fever dream as far as like marketing, because like they did a bunch of like urban like style marketing, a lot of like a graffiti look to everything, and then you read through the story. I just finished I finished chapter or book 8 of Ignition, and like it's it doesn't feel that way at all. The Paraka are just kind of like a group of dark hunters that just decided to rebel, and like nothing about it makes it feel like it should be urban, especially while they're on an island. Like I don't want to say paradise because Voyanui is not a paradise, but like
No.
like an island culture, like an island where it's not really wealthy in any means. Like I always imagine all the Matoran there live in like shacks that could fall apart at any moment. And then in all the trailers, it's like all the Toa rushing through this giant fortress that has a lot of like chain link fences and keep out signs, and I was really trying to be edgy.
It worked.
I loved it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I bought the sets.
Yeah. I mean, those were some really fun and memorable. Hey, you know, Yo Paraka may not be a very good song or advertisement, but hey, yeah, I've never forgot that thing ever since.
That's facts. In fact, someone in the Bionicle Mask posting group, which is a group on Facebook, and they have, I think, stuff on Reddit and Discord. But it's one of the communities that's left over after Bionicle broke apart. Somebody there decided to make shirts for Bionicle, and the first one that I bought was it says it's a Yo Paraka World Tour, and it's like this really awesome like cover art for a band. And my favorite part about it is on the backside, it has like a tour list, and it lists all of like the islands in the universe. So good.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about it.
Whenever I'm in person and someone looks at me and says, "Yo," I can't just. I always have to respond with Yo Paraka.
Yeah, dude.
And they don't get it, but you know, I gotta say Yo Paraka.
It is kind of crazy though, because like Bionicle is one of those things that you can like reference. You can't do like deep lore, but you can bring up in casual conversation, and most people that I talk to, especially here in the States, are like, "Oh yeah, I had the red one when I was a kid."
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of bond over that. And like most people don't realize like how deep Bionicle lore is. Probably because it's a kid series that probably wasn't.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have been as deep as it was. But you can still throw those references out. Even like there's a lot of memes based around the original trilogy of Bionicle movies, especially the first one. Takua. Yeah. And it's kind of fun if people actually know or have watched any of those, just kind of bring it up in passing.
Yeah, I know one of my favorite lines to bring up is like whenever in movies or in TV show, and it all of a sudden just goes to white and just our main character standing there, I just can't help but say, "Save the heart of Metronui."
Yeah, that's fair.
I know for me, I don't exactly recall the exact moment the announcement came for Bionicle ending, but I knew it was sad, and it was also very somewhat depressing. And I guess for me, it was also muddled down by the fact at that time, 2010, I was leaving the country that I was living in for about 10 years there, Paraguay, and I was moving to the States. And so there was just a lot that was just distracting me. We had Bionicle ending, then I had to go and leave the country that I never returned to since. And it was an interesting time. But Bionicle, I don't exactly recall how I felt when it ended. I just remember just getting the sets and be like, yay. At least I got this. But it was somewhat of a disappointment. But
Yeah.
I was really all into the rumors for the Gen 2 of Bionicle. It was during that time, TTV was one channel that I would watch. I don't know exactly how I first heard of them. It was from the Bring Back Bionicle Club, which I was also a member there. And I heard that thrown out, and I found them through a review of Hero Factory, which, Hero Factory, that replaced Bionicle. That's an old memory, Hero Factory.
Yeah.
It's kind of forgotten.
Yeah, they essentially took what they did with Bionicle and they were like, we're just going to make this more baseline. These are heroes that are factory makes. And from that kind of concept was actually a cool idea because they really promoted, like, you could go online, build your own character and have it shipped to you. That was cool at the time. And they did some cool things with their website. I got super into their website because I thought it was a cool idea because they had like a live news report almost that updated daily based off of what was happening in universe. And that was a really nifty idea, even if it was just like a weather report, like it's raining in the Hero Factory City or whatever. It was like, oh, that's nifty. It's raining here too. And they did an okay job. I think the first year was probably the best year for them. After that, the sets kind of got weird and incohesive, and then they changed to the current system, which is CCBS, which I wasn't fond of. They changed a lot, and I think a lot of Bionicle fans weren't fond of it originally. Some people still aren't. And like the thing is, the system was refined to be easier to work with for kids, but in doing that you limited a lot of people with what they could do. They essentially turned everything into a ball socket joint connection, which is cool, but if you're trying to make like a weapon, like if you want to give your hero a really cool sword, you essentially have to work with their default swords or use the old system, the construction sets, to make a cool sword.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of limiting on that end. And I think that was part of the reason why it went downhill. Hero Factory had like a show. And personally, I think that was probably one of the best things they could have done. And I think that's why Ninjago did so well too. Because they made the story accessible. And they didn't overcomplicate the story. But also the story wasn't that good.
No, it was not. But yeah, I remember I was so petty about Hero Factory. Well, not really. I just didn't really like it.
Yeah.
When it first came out, it just kind of looked cheap. The heroes looked really cheap. And in fact, they kind of were cheap in their build. The villains were cool.
Yeah, Gen 1, or like first release Hero Factory, all of the heroes were the same size as the star sets, so the small ones with very limited pieces, to the point where half of the heroes had these like arm like blaster things. The arms didn't move, and if you looked on the other side of it, they were hollowed out.
Yeah, they were.
It was
the two
cheapest
pieces
way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was two pieces that made up their arm.
Yeah.
Unless you were the rookies of the squad. In that case, you got two arms and dual wielding weapons,
which were 10 times cooler.
Yeah. And then your unique looking villains that were the more fun build to make.
Yeah. I still consider like Von Nebula. He's a Bionicle in my brain because he's just he was a unique build. He was a little bit wonky in how he looked, but he wasn't bad. He was a very fun build.
Von Nebula. Yeah, his design kind of inspired my main features of my mock, which looking to my right. But yeah, then Bionicle Generation 2. Do you remember when it was? When was the first time you heard that it was coming back?
I don't really know. Because that's around the time that I was either about to or I was moving back to the States.
Yeah, it was.
So, I essentially just heard that it was coming back, and I was super excited because it was a weird time in my life. I was moving away from the country I had grown up in, and I was born in, and I was going to a new place. One of my favorite YouTube channels was shutting down. It was super weird. But then I heard Bionicle was coming back, and I was like, okay, well, that's odd, but this is kind of exactly when I needed it to. So I was really hyped for it, and especially because they announced that there was going to be a Netflix series for it. I was like,
oh, not yet.
Yeah, but there were rumors at first, and I was like, this is perfect. This is what Bionicle needs, because part of the problem was, like we mentioned earlier, getting into the story of Bionicle was so difficult because they made 3 movies, none of which, by the way, are officially recognized as canon. Elements of them are, but not the full thing. And then they had one movie at the very end, which had probably the best animation, but arguably the worst writing. And it was just really hard to get into the story. With this new series, they have such a good opportunity to make this story really like fleshed out and really easy to come across to kids.
Instead, what we got were like short segments released on YouTube introducing our characters.
Yeah.
And they changed our characters.
They completely changed our characters. Well, okay, not all of them.
No.
But they changed a lot of them. Like, here's a gripe that I will honestly say I don't like about the first generation of Bionicle that I think Gen 2 did better. The difference between a Toa of Stone and a Toa of Earth is whack. Because in the original series, I've been trying to piece it together as I've been reading through the Ignition series. And this is what I've got so far. A Toa of Stone can impact like hard rock. A Toa of Earth can impact like the seismic activity and like dirt or sand. In Generation 2, they swapped it. They made Pohachu a Toa of Earth, and they made Onua a Toa of Stone. And they changed stone to be more things like jewels and gems. And they made Earth to be like sand, mostly. And that was a better way to distinguish it. Do I think that Earth and Stone deserve a distinction? No. That's one of my biggest gripes with Bionicle, but I can live with it. But I think they did it better in G2. I think they switched the elements at least.
I don't think they did, no.
Because
Earth was always rock for Onua. Because even in his advertisements, he's always dealing with rocks.
Well, yeah, but describe to me what the difference between a rock and a stone is.
I had this mental debate. Stone
Uh-huh.
could be a weaker rock.
A weaker rock? Okay, explain this.
Let's just say it's more so the rock that's found on the surface level, versus toe of earth is deep in the tunnels, like where you found them.
Okay.
And you'd have to take a look at the different types of rock, but I think stone made more sense to me when I look at the Maturo year, because they're more of carving into stones.
Right.
And that's how I tend to view stone versus rock, because basically they're almost the same, except stone is probably clay. I don't know.
It's a little weird. My distinguishment is mostly just like big rock versus little rock.
Okay.
But like there are times for instance, most of the time Pohachu and Huki and Onewa use stone in ways of like, I'm gonna pick up this rock and I'm gonna hurl it at you. Whereas like there are a few times where like Onua or Nuparu will make fists of earth. And you don't see that like fists of stone for some reason. So
it's very confusing.
It looks like in the way that they control it, it's a little bit different, but they do make it a little bit more transparent with the designs in Generation 2, because they specifically have Onua with like crystals and stuff, and that's Earth. And they have Pohachu with sand, and that's stone. I don't know, it's whatever.
Sandstone.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Let's go with that.
But yeah, in Generation 2, as far as the personalities of the Toa, it's very different. Tahu's basically the same. Gali, in my opinion, never really had a personality anyways. She's pretty much the same. Kopaka is edgelord to the max, but slips. So he's like...
he doesn't slip, though.
Sorry, he didn't slip. My bad.
Slip no, man.
Pohachu is Australian now, right? It's a different race.
Yeah, he was Australian.
Yeah, which was like, okay, that's cool, but like, why? Is it because he gave him boomerangs? I feel like that's a little bit racist, but okay. And then Onua just became this big, like, brainless guy, which is exactly the opposite of Onua. Onua was like the silent type, but like the strong silent type that's like, all right, you guys are being stupid, let's just do it. He was like Kopaka in that Kopaka was like the silent type, but he was the silent type that got annoyed at everything. Onua is like the peaceful silent type. So the characters were all messed up, and then the power system was completely messed up because they changed it from you have an elemental power and a mask power to you have a mask power that is your elemental power. Which, yeah, it simplified it, but that it was lame.
Yeah, it was a very simplified Generation 2, which I guess it felt like it was pointing towards the next generation of kids.
Yeah.
And they like to simplify things when they get to reboot things sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the designs for the first wave of sets were fantastic. It was a beautiful homage to the original sets, and they were really cool.
Yeah.
I remember being very excited when Bionicle finally was announced at Comic-Con. Hey, we're coming back with that Golden Massive creation. It was like, oh my gosh, yeah, the rumors were true. Woohoo! But yeah, when the second wave ended, I don't remember there being an announcement. It just kind of drifted away.
Yeah.
And at that point, I just kind of lost interest because Journey to 1 was pretty bad.
It was bad, and none of the other story material was really in depth. So like after Journey to 1 was done, I was like, well, I don't really know or care what's happening until like the giant Akimu set got released, and I was like, oh, they beat Makuta, yay. But like the villain was simple. The story was very similar in the fact that, you know, their leader person, who had powers and stuff, got conked out, and these Toa had just arrived from the stars to save him.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing, I will say, for both series is they have a lot of cultural background for them. The original series is based largely off of the Maori culture, that's down in New Zealand. So in fact, all the names have Maori origins. So Toa in Maori translates to like warrior or hero. I'm trying to think of other ones, but like all the prefixes, like ta being fire, that translates. Just things like that. Super, super cool. And a lot of like, I don't know if the styling was really based too much on the Maori culture, but I think they wanted to have an island setting from the get-go, because it was originally going to be like Boneheads of Voodoo Island.
Yeah.
So they wanted to stick to this island setting, and so they decided on this Maori culture, and frankly, that was really cool. In Generation 2, they switched to more of like a Mayan culture, which was interesting. I think it was a little bit harder to relate to, personally. But it was still really nifty. They did it with a lot of the art, and even like on the Mask of Creation, you can see like a lot of the glyphs that they used look more Mayan or Incan. So that part of it is kind of nifty.
Yeah. But yeah, Generation 2 ended, and now we're just waiting for the unlikely Gen 3.
Yeah.
It might happen, but not soon.
Yeah. So while Bionicle was the thing that brought Lego back from, frankly, bankruptcy or near bankruptcy, it seems like nowadays a lot of people at Lego don't think it's a good IP to have right now. And I think part of that is probably due to Ninjago doing so well, and they don't want to have a direct competitor to their own thing. And I get that.
And plus the last time they did Bionicle, it didn't go so well.
Exactly. So I don't think it's donezo for Bionicle yet.
No.
I think there's a chance that it could come back, and if it does, I'll be here. Hopefully I'll have like, you know, a well-paying job and an empty basement that I can just fill with Bionicles. But
yeah. Thinking back as a kid,
mm-hmm.
Bionicle. Was it difficult to get Bionicle as a kid for you? Like, was it easy to get, or was it difficult?
Get as in like obtain, or get as in like
yes,
understand?
To obtain.
Okay. Early on, no. I don't even remember if they sold the first few generations here. I don't remember even seeing the Mata or the Nuva on shelves. So I was always a few generations behind. But I overall it wasn't too bad. The big difficulty was generally double the price for anything. I remember, yeah, double or triple. I think I spent $30 to get Maturo Mari. And to this day, I don't regret it, by the way. I'm just going to put that out there. But, yeah, comparatively to the US, where you could get a full set for like $60 to $80, here you'd have to spend over $100 for a full set of Toa, which was kind of rough.
Yeah.
But that was one thing that I would save up for. And I had relatives that were really kind. And that was another one of those things where that was one thing that they knew that I liked. So if they got me that, I would enjoy it. I think at one point I got three of the green Visorak just because they didn't really know what else to get me. But they knew that Bionicle and they knew green. And I was like, yep, keep them coming. I'll build something with them.
Yeah. In my case, I was living in Paraguay. In Paraguay, Bionicle wasn't really a luxury. You couldn't go to like every store to find a Bionicle. And so for me, when I first found Bionicle, I couldn't get it automatically. It was something that you had to get from the US at that time. And so when I went to the States for Christmas that year, like one of the big things was like, oh, I want to get a Bionicle. You can't get it down there. And so for me, it was like a Pop-Tart for a missionary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you can't get them anywhere else but in the US. And when you do get them, it's like this big treat. And so for me, that's what Bionicle was. It was like this big treat. I couldn't get down there, and it was the only place I can get it was in the US. Eventually, in 2007, there was only one store in Paraguay where you can get a Bionicle. It was a little bit a distance away, and it cost more, obviously. But there was a place where I can get it, and this was around the time of the Baraki. I think I only ever got 2 sets, maybe 3 sets, there. The store was called Miramar. I remember that vividly. And the set that I got was, I got Elec, the green Baraki. And then the next year I got Mutran, that weird Makuta type thing.
Yeah.
And a small Indiana Jones set
Nice.
the next year afterwards. So, yeah, like anywhere else, if I wanted to get Bionicle, I would have to get a knockoff. A very cheap knockoff called Robot.
Did you have, was it just Robot or was it Invincibility Robot? Because I saw that a little bit.
Yeah, for me it was just Robot.
Nice.
It was just Robot, where they had the clearly fake plastic. I got, from Robot, I got, Radak.
Okay.
Or how I used to call it, Radiac.
Yeah.
In the States, he has his golden weapon. In Robot, it's gunmetal.
Interesting.
Which I still have. It's oh my gosh, those are like terrible pieces. They break very easily. I got a Kitongu. However, it didn't have all the pieces, and so I just sent it back. And then the only other one I got was Nokama Hordika. And again, it was just terrible. And also, Prydak, the Robot Prydak. Oh my gosh, that was ugly as well. So yeah, those knockoffs were just my childhood as well.
Yeah. I will say in the stores down, like, you could find Bionicles, but like you couldn't find very many. So like I found, like, when I was looking for the Anika, I really only had the choice between like the 4 of them, and even still there was only one Huki at the time. And like when I was looking at Baraki, because I really wanted Elec, I thought Elec was really cool. Because that was still around the time when I was like, I need a new green guy. And so I was trying to find him, but I never did. So I ended up, my choices were Karpar and Mantax. And I ended up, this is what I did, because at the time, each Bionicle set had like a code on the back of them that you could submit to the Kanoka Club.
And
so what I did was I bought Mantax, and then I memorized the code for Karapar in the story. Not knowing that I probably could have just Googled it, but simpler times. But yeah, so that was actually the only Baraki I got, and I think it's... No, because I did end up getting Elec eventually. Yeah, and I think I might have gotten Karpar as well. But yeah, it was more difficult to find them, and even still, I think at the end of it, I don't know if the stars were being sold, because I think when my mom visited the States that summer, and I begged and pleaded her, and I was like, please, like, I know you have limited suitcase room, but like, please just get me all 6 of them. I have the money to pay for it, but like, this is the last set that Bionicle is selling. Might be the last group of them ever. I just want to have a full series, because beforehand I hadn't. And she's like, okay, all right. And actually, she at first she was like, that's a lot to fit in. Can I like just keep the sets and throw away the canisters? And I was like, no. And she pulled a sneaky on me. She said she only brought like 3, but she actually stuffed the others away for later, which was cute. But yeah, it was definitely not the easiest to be a Bionicle collector growing up. That's for sure.
Yeah, especially in South America.
Yeah.
I was very lucky growing up to have a great grandmother who, she's not the richest person, but she spoils her grandkid. I got spoiled with Bionicle as a kid. I didn't get a whole bunch, but I would get a couple every birthday and Christmas, and it was very grateful. And she got me the entire Stars line, because I knew it was important that this was the last one, and you needed all of 6 of them to get that Golden Tahu, and she got me all of them, and I was just happy for that. And then she tops it at Christmas when she buys me the entire first line of Hero Factory.
Aww.
Heroes, villains, and vehicles included.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot.
It was a lot, and it was like, wow, that's not cheap. And so I love that woman. Yeah, I don't get stuff now because I never ask her for anything. But whenever I did ask her, she'd always get it because she loved me. So yeah, it was great.
That's so
the only
sweet.
time I could get Bionicle down there was going to that store. That store that was a little bit of a distance away, and cost a little bit of money. Get it from my grandma, or find it on eBay, which I rarely did at that time because eBay was a bit more expensive than it is now.
Fair, yeah. Especially with like shipping and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I moved to the States, I got a lot of Bionicle from going to yard sales, which was, I think that was probably the best time to get Bionicle, because that was right when Bionicle just ended.
Yeah.
And so I look at yard sales today and I can't find them.
Yeah.
So today it's just eBay.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I still love Bionicle.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking on eBay to find a good price or a good deal on any set.
Mm.
Which is strange. Bionicle is one toy line that I could just never get rid of.
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever sell my Bionicles. Versus...
Yeah.
Because versus, like, now, like, I'm wanting to get rid of my Star Wars action figures and my Lego figures. But Bionicle, I can't get rid of. Like, that's the one that maybe I'll put on the shelf, but every once in a while, I'll just forget, not really think about it, but I always come back to Bionicle with a bang, and I just really like it. I don't have that with any other toy line or set. It's just Bionicle that I always come back to.
Yeah. I mean, for me, a lot of, like, who I developed into can kind of come from how I journeyed alongside Bionicle, because as a kid you kind of just do whatever you see as a good response from other people. So
Yeah.
If your favorite color is green and other people are like, oh, his favorite color is green, you're stuck with that for a long time. So for me, when I was growing up, I loved the color green. I thought it was great. And then 2006 rolled around with, Toa Kongu. And I was like, just not that great. All the Paraka were similar enough. I was like, Zac 10's cool too, I guess. But I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then the Mari came around, and I looked at Kongu again. And I was like, I really just want to have like a Toa hero that I can look up to and respect and be like, this one's my favorite. And I looked at Kongu, and just with the way he was built, he was the only Toa that had no melee weapon. He had 2 guns. And in my brain at the time, I was like, that's lame. That's really dumb.
In the Nika?
No, in the Mari.
Yeah, yeah. That was the biggest disappointment for me, because I really loved Kongu and Nika.
Yeah.
And when we got to the Mario, it's like, this is Kongu? Wow, he sucks.
Yeah. And so I was like, that's such a bummer. Like, I liked his mask and his coloring, and his overall build was okay too. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start looking at the other characters, and see which ones I liked. And it was funny because, like, at first I was like, well, maybe I'll look at Nuparu because, I liked him most in the Anika series because of his claws. And I looked at him and he had a shield, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I was just kind of looking at each of them. I liked Holly, I think, the most, just build-wise early on.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, obviously she was a girl, so she couldn't be my favorite. And I just kind of kept on looking at them, and I was like, I'm kind of at a loss. They're all just kind of samey. And then at one point I was looking through and I saw Maturo, and I was like, normally I don't go for the ice ones because they're asymmetry. But his mask isn't, like, not fully. It still had the little, like, Mari, like, tube connection on it. But otherwise, it was pretty much symmetrical. I was like, he's pretty cool. Like, I really liked the mask. And then I saw the little Mari movie that the Lego put out, and I was like, oh yeah, Maturo's definitely my favorite, because in that one, he's the one that's, like, not the most prominent. Like, Holly is very prominent, Jaller's very prominent, but, like, Maturo's the one that's kind of in the background, that's like, yeah, I'll chase down that uh, random sea monster when the others get knocked off a cliff, yeah, I'll yeet my like platform, like flying vehicle thing into its mouth and fight it off. And then at the very end, you see him like flying overhead as Jollar's calling out for him, and he's on one of the things that he chased away earlier, one of the creatures, and like his only line in that entire thing is, "I'll take it from here," like coyly, but like also in a really cool way. And I was like, he's my favorite, bar none. I like him a lot, and so
Yeah.
I was really inspired. And around that time, I was kind of like, what really is my favorite element? Was I just basing it off of color earlier? Was I don't know. And then I just kind of started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I really, maybe I just need to rethink about it. And I thought for a little while, and I was like, you know what? I really like ice, even if it's just because of Maturo. I have an actual good connection to this as an elemental power based off of this story. And then that's around the time that I actually got into the comics.
Oh yeah.
And that's the worst time to be a Maturo fan. Because, a few chapters in, he sacrifices himself for the entire universe. And I remember, like, I was reading that in the online comic form because I couldn't get the real comic. And I was reading through it, and I was just like, first off, I was in awe because, the time leading up to that, Maturo really steps up. He kind of becomes the leader of the Toa Mari for a little while, and the Toa Nika for a little while. And previously, all the Toa of Fire are the leaders. So I was like, oh, okay, that's really cool and really different. And then, like, he's the one that has the Mask of Life. He's the one that's like, it's his mission to get it to the core. I was like, this is awesome. I'm following this. And then, in his last moments, he feels no fear, and he puts on this mask, and it kills him. And I'm like, no. And I was in tears, like,
Oh yeah.
real literal tears. And I actually just in the past few days read the actual novelization of that, and I was in tears again because like, you really relate to this character. He's at the time, I just liked him because of his cool mask and how he did the things he did in the Mari movie. But his whole story arc of being just this translator for one of the Turaga, to joining this Matoran group that feels like they need to act, and then becoming a Toa, and then leading a Toa as one of the few Toa of Ice to ever do that, to being one of two characters in the entirety of the Bionicle story that the Mask of Life deems worthy to be its wearer, and then sacrificing himself to save the universe. Like, all of that, even like my whole like channel name, everything is based around like just how cool Maturo was as a character and how much I was inspired by him. And it just really cool character arc. If anybody listening has a chance to, I definitely recommend Ignition 1 through 8, although you can skip a few of those. But 8 is the one where Maturo dies, and just reading his story is cool because I think it's one of the most important stories in Bionicle, because especially in the first book that he's introduced, there's not much said about him. There's not much that is really described about him. But the general consensus of that story is the leaders of the time aren't telling the villagers what's going wrong. The Toa are missing. And the decision that is made for 2 different sets of Matoran are that you don't have to be a Toa to be a hero. And I think that's one of the most powerful lessons I could have learned from Bionicle, is that you don't have to be in this place of authority. It doesn't have to be your job. But you can always step up and become that hero. Someone who's willing to sacrifice, maybe not their life per se, but time and energy to help others. So I think that's one of the most important things to me about Bionicle, was just how inspired by it I became.
Yeah. Yeah. And Maturo's death was just a very shock to have happen. Because beforehand, death wasn't really something that you'd really seen in Bionicle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was somewhat of a sacrifice with Takanuva, but
Yeah.
he didn't really die. He came back very quickly after that segment, so there wasn't really much of a worry there. But Maturo was kind of, as a kid, very gut-wrenching because he doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And, like, he was one of the fun characters that you like to read. And he sacrificed himself, and it's like, oh no, he doesn't come back. We have Toa in Ignika that, you know, I used to think was like, is this like a semi-Maturo?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going on with him? But no, he was just the Mask of Life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, I want Maturo back.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because, like, they could have easily gone several different routes to bring Maturo back, right? The Mask of Life could have brought him back, or he was, for Pete's sake, wearing the Kanohi Mask of reanimation. They could have done something with that, or a bunch of different things. But at the end of it, they chose to keep that sacrifice in. And that was so, like, crazy. First off, ground shaking to me.
Yeah.
But, like, so crazy important because it actually showed the importance of his sacrifice. Because everything past his point of sacrifice wouldn't have happened hadn't he done it. And there's a whole, like, you know, there's a whole alternate universe where he doesn't do that sacrifice. And the world kind of falls apart, and he's actually labeled kind of a failure, essentially. But he in the main story he does, and it's, I don't know, it's cool. You don't see, death is not something that's, like, super well explored with a lot of, like, children's media.
No.
But this is one time where they did it well, where the person chooses to sacrifice themselves to save their friends. And while death is, like, talked about all throughout Bionicle, like, Sidorak is killed almost on screen. But it's more of, like, when you see a bad guy get killed or defeated in a kid's show, you don't think of it as they're dead. You see them and you notice that they're defeated. But Maturo's death was a more real feeling because you weren't expecting a good guy to die.
Yeah. More real than Lacan.
Yeah. Lacan did die too, yeah. I forgot about that. And actually, he's brought back later because of the stupid red star, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, is that the case?
Yes. Everybody that dies except Maturo basically gets resurrected by the red star, making their sacrifices pointless. And
Man, I got a lot of reading to do.
the red star also isn't really explained too well because, like, I think there are some story serials, but I don't think there are that many. Because I'm pretty sure Turaga Lacan gets revived in the Red Star, along with a bunch of other Toa. Not all of them, but a bunch of them. I think the old version of Hydraxon's up there too. It's just Red Star is weird, man. It's very weird.
Okay.
But yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some other Bionicle media, like the games, for instance. Did you ever get into the games as a kid?
That surprisingly no. Some of the online games, yeah. Like I played when I found out about Biomedia Project, I did play through Matanui online game, and I played through there was like a Metronui, like
Maze of Shadows?
Maybe, I don't know. It was the one where you had the disc launcher, like Vakama's disc launcher, and you had to fight off the Morbazak. And was it the Morbazak or was the Karzani plant? I don't remember. Anyways, you had to fight it off, and I remember like I started playing, and then like I was like, I can do better, and so I kept on grinding at it. That was probably one of the first games that I like grinded at just to try and be good. And if I look back, I probably wasn't even that good. The controls were really bad too. But besides that, like I did end up buying Bionicle Heroes. I haven't played it much though.
No. It's fun, but I had it as a kid, and I still have it. But I never played it much because I wasn't very good at it. And for me as a kid, when it comes to playing video games, I don't like dying in video games because I just like it to be perfection. In terms of story wise. And so whenever I played in Bionicle Heroes, like I would die. Like I don't think I got past the first or second level. And like that wasn't very fun as a kid when you couldn't get past the first or second level. And it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
And so I never really got past that. There was a Bionicle the Game that I saw in a magazine, which I thought was really cool, but I never got it. And then I actually never played Monog ever before, which should probably do at some point. I've seen the animations, but I never actually played the game.
That's one of those games that's like, it's not like the most expertly created game in the world, but it's charming and it's great for its time. Like it had some good music to it. It had a really nice sense of like exploration for this island that we never really got again. Voyanui had its own game and Metronui had its own game, but like Matanui online game was really cool with what you got to see in the exploration.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, any other Bionicle game, they were okay, but
I know that they tried to make a Glatorian.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
The Glatorian Arena game,
Yeah.
which I really wanted to play because it was a cool idea, but the problem was that it was it required Flash or something, and in my computer it was really slow, and so I couldn't really play. Like it was like 2-3 frames a second, and at that time it was a high quality computer game.
Yeah, I remember like going through like a few hours just to download it, and then playing it was really, really rough, but I really, really tried to get good at that one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I couldn't really do anything with it. It just was too slow and was not responsive. It's a shame because the idea behind it was just so cool.
It actually was, and like the Glatorian get a lot of like flack because they're a very different feel. The whole Glatorian era of Bionicle isn't
2009, man. Oof.
yeah,
Interesting.
it was not it was how do I explain it? It wasn't really based on like the Maori culture. It didn't really feel like Bionicle in some ways, and it didn't have any of the same characters for a long time, except for Matanui. It was very different. Kind of like almost an ancient Egyptian feel to a lot of it.
Yeah.
But that being said, set designs were great. Color choices were great. Thornax launcher is one of my favorite launchers.
Yeah.
And
Gresh, I think, is one of my favorite sets.
I agree.
He's just so cool.
First off, Gresh's weapons are probably my favorite weapons of any character.
Oh, yeah, they are. They are.
They're just great. The one thing I found out recently, so Gresh, I don't know if you know this. It blew my mind when I found out. Gresh is actually the lead writer's like self-insert character. His name is Gresh because it's short for Greg Farshti.
What?
Yeah. It's so odd. But that explains why like the character is like made to be a cool character. Because the writer's like, you know what? Screw it. I want to be in this story too. So yeah, Gresh is a great character. All of the builds were really cool, and the pieces that we got out of it, all of like the ice pieces are amazing.
Yes.
Akar's fire sword is great. Like,
oh yeah,
just amazing pieces. That was such a good year. And so for the Glatorian Arena, they did a good job for making a game. I remember towards the end, it got super difficult. I never beat it. I might actually download it right now just because I want to beat it. But yeah, that was one of the few ones. I'm actually looking back through all of them right now, and I did play a few of them. I didn't play a lot of the early ones, but I did play Stop the Morbizak, which was from 2004. I tried to do one of the games in 2005, and it just never worked on my computer. And then there was like a Bionicle Mari game where you got to play different mini games based off of which Toa Mari you chose, and those were all fun. And oh yeah, in 2008, the Battle for Power, I remember doing that. I don't remember it being good, but I remember doing it.
What was that one like?
I don't even remember. I'm just remembering this picture that's on the Biomedia project, and it looks really familiar, but I just don't remember it being good. I remember a lot of frustration looking at this screen. I want to say it was almost like a rock paper scissors style game, but I could be wrong.
Let's see, web games. See what we got here.
They had quite a few.
Adventure. Let's see.
Yeah. Of course, there was always the good old
the Battle for Power.
Yeah, it was Battle for Power.
It's oddly familiar.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's
just familiar.
Very odd.
Interesting. But the main one that I remembered was Glatorian Arena.
That one was a good one.
It was. It was a good one. So, what is? I don't know. This might be something for a later time. But who's your favorite character?
I mean, pretty obviously Maturo.
Yeah.
Based off my rant earlier, but
besides Maturo,
that gets more difficult because there's some really cool characters from each part of the series, and I like different characters for different reasons.
Yeah.
I oof. I really like Krika because he's one of the few Makuta that's like, I don't know about this whole taking over the world thing. I don't really feel like killing people. I just don't want to lose my job, so I'll go along with it until I cannot go along with it. And I think he's one of the more interesting characters. There's also Lezovic, which is an awesome character in my opinion. I like Pohachu a lot. Just a chill, down-to-earth guy. And then, like, as far as villains go, obviously Makuta in and of himself is a great villain. But there's also, like, anti-heroes, I guess. Like, Vizon is just fun. If we're looking at Dark Hunters, there's Lariska. If we're looking at Order of Madanui, there's Helrix. Our good old Bendy girl. There's a lot of good characters. I would say my second favorite, besides Maturo, would probably have to be Lezovic, though.
Yeah. Isn't that a somewhat controversial statement?
It might be. But if it is, other people are just wrong. I like him a lot. His build in general is really cool. Again, he's green, so like I'm always going to be at least a little partial. But first off, he's green. Secondly, he wears the Faxon, which is also just another beautiful mask. And then his story arc is that he's one of the older Toas in the universe. And his entire team died. And so he's trying to seek out a little bit of vengeance, and also trying to kill Karzani. It's a whole thing. But
yeah.
He was introduced later on in the series, which was kind of a bummer. I think because the whole writing team had to basically write based off of, okay, the marketing team just sent us what the new like series of Toa or villains look like. Now I have to figure out a story for all of these. Okay, who's this character? Who's this character? So Lezovic has a story. It was just kind of hashed in there last second. But personally, I like the idea of a Toa just kind of like being this old skeptical Toa that's like really sad because all of his friends are dead. That's a bad way of putting it, but I like him a lot.
Yeah.
There's also, I want to say his name is Zarya. Zarya is one of my favorites too. I could totally be wrong. Zarya Bionicle. Yeah, I'm right. Okay, so Zarya is a Toa of iron. And he's in, the only story he's in that I know of is I think it was either Yesterday Quest or Riddle of the Great Beings. I think Yesterday Quest. And he is, I think, the only Toa of iron because everybody else in the Iron Tribe got killed. Everybody just hates the Iron Tribes.
Yeah.
It's really sad. But yeah, everybody in the Iron Matoran group got killed. He became a Toa, and without knowing how the Makuta evolved or how to use his powers, he accidentally killed the Makuta as soon as he turned into a Toa. And a lot of his arc is about him trying to learn how to control his powers, and the responsibility of, I'm a Toa, I shouldn't be killing people, but I also have the power to prevent people from, like, even moving, which, by the way, they didn't do any power balancing for him. Like, there's a point where, like, I think Tahu and some other, maybe it was Orde, were like, we need to do this, and they were arguing, and he's just like, okay, both of you just sit down, forces them to sit and like focus. He's great. Definitely one of my favorites, even though he's literally only in one story. the prospect of him is really cool.
Yeah.
What about?
I guess for me.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. For me, I have to differentiate things because a lot of times when I look at my favorites, I don't think they're my favorite because of their character. It's just because I like their design. So, and I want to do design wise in another podcast. So, in terms of character, as a kid, I really liked Tahu. Mainly just from the movie. I don't know why. I just thought he was cool.
Okay.
He was brash. He was red. He surfs in lava. I mean, how is that not cool?
That yeah, can't argue that.
And then my second favorite, growing up there as a kid, became Matau, because he was funny to me. I thought it was really funny to watch. He's also really fun to watch. He was green, which growing up as a kid, I really liked the green ones as well. Which I got to meet the actor from Mattel, which was great.
Awesome.
I loved it. Yeah, and like he remembered doing Mattel, and he's like, "Oh, I'm happy that you still like that after years later," and so that was fun.
That's
But
awesome.
if I'm looking more into character, I might also say Hydraxon. Reading the comics, like he was cool. I loved him in the trailer because he was just so menacing and posing. It's like, I believe that mask belongs to me.
Yeah.
He was so cool. I just bought him recently. I'm looking over at him right now.
He's a good build too. Yeah.
He's really cool. But like at this comics, wasn't it that Hydraxon was actually Dekar?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was interesting. There was a lot more personality to Hydraxon due to the comics, for me witnessing him. And I thought, that's a cool story that they did there. Then, of course, Maturo, which, Maturo had to sacrifice.
Yep.
Yes.
Rest in peace, Maturo.
And lastly, probably Akar.
Okay, yeah.
Akar, because he's the old guy, he's the gruff guy that's like past his prime. I just like that old fighter character that's like that
he's still going even though he's like, everybody's like, nah dude, you're old, and he's like, nah, I'll fight you, I still got it in me.
Jim Cummings, man. Yeah, I mean there's probably more. Kopaka. He's a recent one. Just from reading the novels recently, I just really like Kopaka.
Yeah, that's fair. I like Kopaka as well. He's kind of like, he's a jerk, but like I can't hate him. Like all of the Toamata, I kind of have this little like bit of disdain for, because they do a couple things that are kind of, well, really rude in the Ignition series, at least early on. But I like Kopaka a lot because like he'll just give it to you straight. He's like, no, I don't like you. Take that. At one point too, Kopaka has like one of the best like scenes in the first book of Ignition. I think it's the first. Maybe it's the second. Yeah, it's the second book, where like a few of the Matoran don't trust the Toa because like the Paraka disguise themselves as Toa. And so a few of the Matoran are like, how do we know that you're real Toa? You don't even have your masks because they got stolen. And like they're trying to fight these Toa, and at one point Tahu puts up this flame barrier, and the Matoran are like, you do this, I'll blast them. And Kopaka's like, screw it, I'm done with this. And he walks through Tahu's flame barrier like it's nothing. And Tahu's like, and he walks past towards them, like about to freeze them to death. And Onoa's like, okay, wait, stop. Kopaka, stop. Just chill.
Chill.
Yeah, it's such like Kopaka's great, but like at the same time, he's also like a really like he's a nice guy under all that ice.
Mm-hmm.
He just like doesn't get along with Tahu and it gets tired of people that are stupid.
Yeah. Do you have like something that you remember greatly about growing up in the Bionicle community? Like any fan content that you just love looking at all the time and you just still love it today?
Yeah, there's one guy early on. I first got introduced to the Bionicle community through like Legomation Studio.
Oh yeah,
and a
Legomation.
few people that reviewed them. But there's one guy, I think his name is Watati.
Oh, Watati, yeah. I know that guy.
His stop motions were some of the best stop motions I have ever seen. And like
even today,
yeah,
they're great.
They're just fantastic. And mind you, are they lore accurate? Not at all. But I think the one that I keep thinking of is I think it's Fighters 2 and Nika versus Paraka. And so it's Maturo and Kongu fighting against two Paraka, Zaktan and Vizok? No, Radak. And like the music choices that he had for these were fantastic. The fighting was fantastic. Mind you, this is all stop motion, so I'm sure it took hours, if not days, to create. And like he was clever about how he did everything. Just amazing. So like that was the thing that I could watch daily for months on end and never get tired.
Oh yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, he definitely was one of the early ones. 2007 was a great year for stop motion Bionicle. Because there was Watati, and then Spidey 406 who did Bionicle Wars, which had one called the Duel of the Fates, where we had Huki versus Maturo.
Oh, I think I did see that.
Yeah, like those were the two who had great choreography, and I've not seen any other stop motion that has the same quality of choreography since then.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how well they hold up, like years later. They're still very well done. For me, YouTube Bionicle was something that I got into a lot during those days. Yeah. There was the Fantoka series from Shadowed 1-1. That was interesting. Really interesting. He's weird. Yeah. And then, something that we both know, the Chronicles of Jollar.
Oh. Yeah. That was, so like, I started watching that, I guess that probably came out around 2008, or now 2007, 2008-ish, because I remember clicking on one of them because I was like, oh, it's got Alec in the thumbnail. I'm gonna click on it, and I did, and I was like, what is this? This is so weird. And I like watched one, and then I watched another, and I was like, this is bizarre. And then I just like binged them, and this was before I had a YouTube account because I was too young at the time. And so I remember at one point, one of like my sister's friends was over and they logged into YouTube and forgot to log out. So I was like, you know what? This person deserves it. I'm going to subscribe to their channel with this other person's account. They never found out, but like it still makes me hope that they still get updates from whichever Jollar channel I subscribe to.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, I recently just marathoned or binged all those old videos, and they're still funny.
Yeah.
It's somewhat cringy because the guy was really young then,
Yeah.
but he does grow into his voice, and for the most part, it's consistent. Last year, this past Christmas, they came back
Yep.
with a new set, and they were golden. They were fantastic, and it's very surprising how great they were years later.
Yeah.
Really fun.
I was really impressed because so they had created I think two previous movies, quote unquote, which were essentially just longer versions of their skits with like weird random lore that they decided to put in for different jokes, and they really stuck to that lore, by the way. Like every time you thought, oh, okay, this is just a throwaway joke, it ended up coming back like 3 scenes later. So good. But for Jowler 3, which was their most recent series, which was their kind of comeback, it was very similar to that and very similar to their normal shows. And it still continued some of that lore, but it wasn't like you necessarily needed to know it because none of the show made sense anyways. But yeah, just overall, like, those guys are great. I think both of them are studying to be film majors, or at least Mr. 7 Random 7 is. And so like you can really see, especially in the newer episodes, just how much work and how much better they are now. Just rather big parts of my childhood. I still can't look at Jowler's mask, the calyx, the same way. Because I think of a, I'm just going to say it, a very stupid character that gets himself into a lot of troubles, but also is sometimes all-powerful, depending on the situation.
Yeah. Oh, man. But, they were great.
Yeah.
There were things that we loved as kids growing up. And to see that thing return was just like, oh, wow. It really just felt like a piece of childhood and nostalgia just really being strong, because it was pure and it was actually good as compared to other things. And then lastly, again, Lego Mation Studios, one of the big ones that I saw earlier on. That's how I learned about the new designs for like Glatorian and the stars and whatnot. And he was fun. Granted, he wasn't very accurate, but he was fun.
Yeah. I think
he was fun.
The first time I watched him was when he was reviewing the trailer to the Bionicle Legends Reborn. And I remember watching him, and he was like super negative the whole time.
Oh,
and
man.
I was like, why are you being so negative? This is the first Bionicle movie we've had in years. Obviously, it's going to be good. Because at the time, I didn't know how to critique things at all. And I was like, I'm never going to watch this guy again. And then, like, another video of him popped into my feed. And it was... I didn't even realize they were the same person until months later. And I was like, no way. This guy is actually a Bionicle fan. He wasn't just hating on it. He was just trying to make it funny. And I guess in my mind, it didn't come across that way. So it was... I followed him for quite a while after that. I liked... One thing that he did that most other channels didn't do is they had a, like... breakdown of the pieces, and then there was like a sped up version of him building it. I really liked that.
Those were fun.
Yeah,
it was fun. Yeah. My channel name is not based off of his. It's coincidental. It was done for reasons at the time. And then of course TTV podcast, The Three Virtues.
Yep. Which
I had a lot of fun with that early on. It was the only podcast I really listened to way back when.
Yeah.
And it was really special when they did the LJ recap reviews that came out every Tuesday. And I remember being very excited every Tuesday when that thing came out.
Yeah.
And they're on eBay today, which was fun.
That whole group. So some of them were in the Bring Back Bionicle group that I was in,
Yes,
and
they were.
early on there was a little bit of drama between one of the members of the group and some of the people in TTV. So I actually met them through. I met some of them because I feel terrible for this, but I essentially tricked that person that was in the Bionicle group because I knew him, not in real life, but we had talked a bit, and so I got him into a call, and then I snuck the TTV group into it, and we all just kind of talked about what happened because he was being kind of toxic online, and we talked about it. And anyways, long story short, I ended up meeting them. They're really cool guys. Kahi, who isn't a member anymore, was the person who mainly led that. But I think in that I met Meso, Kahi. I don't think LJ was in there. I think I would have remembered him. Maybe Vardaran. Anyways, I met them through that. And then later on, they did like a game night where they played Dota with fans. And that's actually what got me into Dota and later Smite. So yeah, the guys that I played with, I think Takuma was also one of them. I still have a few of them as like friends on Steam, even though I don't play really any games with them. But it was still cool to, yeah, I still have Takuma on my friends list. It was really cool to meet them. They're really nice guys.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I found TTV by looking at Hero Factory reviews. But I think I subscribed to them for Bionicle. Way back when they were first doing that. Because that was when I first got into Minecraft. Sorry, is it Bionicle?
No.
Minecraft?
Bionicle was the thing after their supposed Gen 3. I think you're thinking of Biocraft.
Biocraft. That's it right there. That's it. Biocraft. Yeah. I subscribed because of Biocraft, which was really cool. And they finally came back and redid it.
Yeah.
Which was exciting.
That honestly is a spectacular, for any Bionicle fans that haven't seen it, that is one of the best fan videos, because it incorporates a lot of Minecraft things and it incorporates a lot of Bionicle things, and there's a lot of inside jokes in there. There's a lot of things that happen that are just kind of funny. The soundtrack is actually not even as a joke, it's actually good. They did a great job with that. It's just a really great
yeah,
it's a great piece of fan work, and I know they were really that was the thing that got them big, was them doing a Bionicle Minecraft thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But in the end, I was really impressed with what they did, and proud of them, even though they really tugged at our heartstrings when they were like, yeah, we're gonna release it, and their announcement for that was April 1st. I was like, It was rude. But they did.
Yeah, especially in past years where they're like, we're gonna do Biocraft. Sorry, it's canceled. It's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
Those were the days. Those were fun.
Yeah, TTV also did have their Bionicle thing, which was their exploration of... It was just kind of like an idea of, hey, we're going to pretend like we're LEGO executives or LEGO workers, and how we would go about making a Gen 3 with just the regular brick sets. And I know a ton of people in the Bionicle community really clowned on them and stuff, but what they did was, first off, a piece of fan work, and there was no reason to really critique it that harshly, but it was still really cool. A lot of the art that was done for it was nifty. I think, in my opinion, the most contended thing was that they decided to make Liwa a girl, which in my opinion isn't a bad thing, except for the fact that Liwa translates in Maori literally to man, which is kind of just unfortunate.
Right, yeah. I know that they said in later podcasts that it was probably a good suggestion would be just to have a brand new set of characters than just remaking the old ones.
Yeah.
Which would be, which I think is probably something that Bionicle could need, is just have a new set of characters instead of just remaking the old ones, because that was probably one thing that maybe was bad for Gen 2, because we already had a mental image of what these characters were like, and they weren't the same when we had the Gen 2. So
Yeah. We already had expectations for how they were. If they were completely new characters, I agree. It would have been a completely different feel.
but I can understand why they went with the original, because they're iconic.
Yeah.
And they would definitely, for sure, be one of the better selling ones to start out with. So, yeah.
Yeah, very true.
Do you have anything else that we want to talk about today for today's Bionicle podcast?
One thing I will just plug real quick. It's not really a plug. Recently, I decided to go through all of the Bionicle masks and just kind of essentially list them with all their powers and limitations and ranked them. And one thing that I did notice is that just how much love really went into Bionicle. There are, let me scroll down real quick. 69 funny. 68 unique mask powers listed in Bionicle. Which is a lot, especially when you have to realize only 3 of them that I can think of are elemental. 4 if you count the Mask of Time, 5 if you count the Mask of Life, but those are not really elements. Everything else is a non-elemental power, and they really they made them seem cool. Now, I will admit, the balancing is not great. One person will have the ability to raise anything from the dead to have it fight anything for you, and another person will be able to breathe underwater. The Kanohi Cow is easily one of the worst masks in Bionicle lore. Just the default one. The Nuva one is okay, but the Cow, the water breathing, it's not infinite, and yeah, it's just not great. But anyways, beyond that, there's a lot of different masks, and there's a lot of there's just a lot of story behind the masks. There's a lot of shapes to the masks. Even if not all the masks that are mentioned were actually released as sets, there's still a lot of them. All that to say, we were really fortunate to have such a cool series, even though it was definitely probably overly complicated. It was still such a great series, and it's something that I will remember for the rest of my life. And I'm always hopeful for a reboot. A good reboot. But it's one of those things that at the end of the day, if we never do get another reboot, I will still look back to this story and just remember it fondly for just how cool it is and all it's done.
I feel slightly sad that our next generation of kids are not going to have the same experience with Bionicle as we did.
Yeah.
Because you can't buy them in stores.
Mm-hmm.
it's not the best thing to allow them to just play with them all the time. So
Right. The one saving grace is that a lot of people online have been either finding or creating 3D models of Bionicles. So like there's the Studio parts that you can get, and I believe a lot of people have been pretty successful in 3D printing. 3D printing technology still has ways to go to get to like Lego quality, but if nothing else, there's at least a little bit of a revival in Bionicle just in how all that works.
yeah,
And in reality, one of the best things about Bionicle is the community. Like, the fact that we're having a canon contest for how Helrix looks, you know, at least 10 to 13 years after she was even brought up in story is just awesome to me.
yeah. Even though we got a noodle out of it.
Yeah, we got a noodle.
The idea behind it was still good.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the mask power, you're saying that the Howl was your least favorite in terms of power wise, correct?
The cow?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my least favorite. There's also like the Mask of Clairvoyance is also bad, and the Mask of Undeath is just like, why? But otherwise, yeah.
For me, I think the one mask that I didn't really like was Wanua's mask. It was pretty much just a flat. It was just it was pretty much a flashlight.
So
almost.
I did a lot of research on it because I was like, surely they didn't just give him a face mounted flashlight. Like, that can't be it, right? So technically he has, how night vision works is he can see in the dark as long as he chooses to. And then if he wants, he can make his mask glow so that other people can see in the dark, aka a light. Okay. And then if he also has the light on, he can use it to have limited ability to see through objects.
Okay.
So at least there's that. It's it's not the best of masks, but it is I think on my ranking it's at least, let me see. Yeah, it's it's like ninth from the bottom. There's a few that are better, and mind you, I told a few people this in the Bionicle group I'm in because I wanted them to look at it and see what they thought. It's not that any mask is necessarily bad. It's just that there are other masks that can either do that thing better or can be used in more situations. So like night vision is cool, but when you have like sonar, you don't need night vision as much. Or
right.
Like stealth is great, but if you have invisibility, that might be better. Or levitation's okay, but if you have the power to fly, that's, in my opinion, better.
Flying Toa of Earth.
Yeah. Good times.
Good times. Good times.
Yeah.
All right. Any other last words you would like to say?
Nah, that's it. Oh, wait. Last words, bring back Bionicle. That's it. That's it.
Oh, yeah. That's my Minecraft username. Bring back Bionicle with Lego JPL. Woohoo.
Woohoo.
Yeah, that was back when we still wanted to bring back Bionicle. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't really care too much. Because after Gen 2. Yeah. Shameless plug. Follow us on Anchor. Support us there. $1 makes all the difference. Besides that, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.